my pleasure to introduce and give the virtual stage to Sue Hewlings. Sue, take it away.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Len. Thanks for having me here today. Let me get my video right here. And I'm going to share screen. And I think the connection of all these topics is perfect because we've been highlighting a lot of like broader topics relative to immunity and COVID. And I'm going to focus on one in particular, which is vitamin D. So if you'll just give me just a second to share screen. Okay, so I want to tell everybody about a really exciting project that we have been conducting over the last year. And it's a website, vitamindandme.org. And it is a reflection of a collaboration between lots of people in the industry. And I'm here to discuss it and kind of give you a walkthrough for multiple reasons. And I think it's a great example of obviously our topic and also about what we can achieve when we collaborate to get this information relative to nutrition and disease and health in general out there to the community. So this was a collaboration between CRN, Aspirant, which was the website design and establishing the format, et cetera, and then Nutrisource, who provided the content. This is me, just a little bit about my background so that you know who's speaking. My name is Sue Hewlings. I'm Director of Scientific Affairs at Nutrisource. And for the company, I do a lot of structure, function claim substantiation, a lot of medical writing. But because of my background in higher education and academia, I was asked to provide the content for this website. And I was really excited to do so because I've been talking about vitamin D and its connection to immunity and just overall health and wellness for, gosh, over a decade now. So I was excited to provide the content and to be part of this collaboration. So CRN started talking and their vitamin D task force started discussions over a year ago about the importance of vitamin D and how much research was coming to the forefront. Now, we'd already had quite a bit of publications relative to immunity in general. And then as the pandemics began, more and more research specific to COVID-19 was emerging quickly. The beginning research, of course, was a lot of observational data, a lot of epidemiological data. And then as we progressed throughout the pandemic, more and more randomized control trials, and then in the more recent months, meta-analyses. So what I'd like to do is just show you what we did in this collaboration, what we put together. We've determined in the last week that we're going to continue the effort and keep this going for at least another year and kind of see where it goes. So let me just show you what we put together, what we have to offer. I hope that you will spread the word about the website and at the very least, go check it out. And we'll talk more about it. So obviously, we've presented and discussed already today the importance of vitamin D in the immunity. And the idea is not a new one, the connection, the establishment of the connection. And based on this information, this is where this idea took place. On the website, we provide not just studies that have been published, but we also provide basic information relative to vitamin D and the immune system, and then like the immune system in general. And much of the foundational information and science information that you heard today, we provide on the website, and we provide it in, we try to unscience it a little bit, if you will, and provide it in educated layman's terms, I think is the best way to say it. Initially, when we created the effort, our target audience was people who were most likely to be vitamin D insufficient, which were people over 50. But I think as the years gone on and the research has come out, we've kind of laid back a little from that and realizing that, wow, it really just is affecting everyone. So this just gives you an idea of some of the information that we have from the foundational educational perspective. One of the great features of the website that I think it really turned out great is the podcast section. So at NutriSource, our CEO, Will Rowe, has a podcast, the Campfire Nutrition, where he highlights industry professionals and issues in the industry. We took that concept and integrated it into the Vitamin D and Me platform, and we've interviewed experts in the field of vitamin D. And these turned out really nice. You can check them out they're even on YouTube. You can check them out via the site, via the NutriSource site, et cetera. And we had some really, really great presenters, discussions surrounding immunity and vitamin D here. We also provide highlight reels of these. So if you don't have time or the attention span to listen to a whole podcast, we provide great highlight reels. Plus, if you're looking for what experts are saying about very specific topics, these are great little snippets, if you will. And also for those of you that are educators or perhaps want them for other webinar purposes, they are here for you to use on specific topics. The big sort of center of the website are the study summaries. So this has been a huge effort, really. What we do is every so many weeks, we redo our search. So we created a PubMed search on vitamin D and COVID-19. So we cast a large net when it comes to PubMed searching, and we redo the search at least once a month. And what we do is we take the studies that are out there and vitamin D and COVID-19, we summarize them. And that's what we put on the website. And what you see here is a screen clip from that. Each of the studies are summarized with a take-home message at the front. So if you just want to peruse them, you can just get a take-home message. It's a little easier than a giant PubMed search if you're looking just to see what's out there in the research. The most recent ones will be first. What we've also done in the last few months is highlighted the meta-analyses, because we do have enough information that a lot of meta-analyses have come forth. So this just gives you an example. We actually have probably more like 18 meta-analyses now, but of the 12 meta-analyses of blood levels of vitamin D and COVID-19, what was found was that lower blood levels of vitamin D were significantly associated with either a higher incident or greatest disease severity or greater mortality. And there were some studies that showed no connection. We do provide those as well. One of the important parts about our initiative is that this would be an entirely unbiased presentation. In addition, there would be no mention of the funders or of the vitamin D industry people that were supporting the effort. This was purely for educational purposes and would be unbiased. So you will see some, of course, some studies where there wasn't a connection, but the majority, in fact, do show a connection. And I do want to say one thing that's very important, and I think that this has been quite clear in the presentations we've had today, is that it really isn't about just one nutrient anyway. And even though we're highlighting one nutrient here, I think we all know vitamin D levels and their connection to immunity and COVID-19 do not occur in a silo. And they are connected, of course, to all these other issues we've been talking about: diet as a whole, other nutrients, obesity, frailty. And we see that vitamin D connects with these other comorbidities as well. Then we provide a question and answer educational section as well, with topics that are in this sort of format. This is just an example. How common is vitamin D deficiency and insufficiency, and who is at risk is an example. Everything is referenced, so you can see where we obtained the information in order to provide these sections. Another great feature of the site is we do a vitamin D and COVID-19 in the news. And we did this so that we could capture what was going on in the popular media and wouldn't necessarily only have the published literature. You know, what's being presented, what's being said in the lay media about the topics. So this is a nice little vitamin D in the news. So that is the highlights of our website. We're really excited about, we're really proud of it. And what I really hope comes from it is more initiatives like this in our industry, because we do, I've presented and sat in on so many webinars and educational sessions to know that we have so much information to share in our industry. And vitamin D is a great place to start, obviously, because it's connected to everything else, including our environment. I just hope this is the beginning of lots of great things coming from our industry to share with the public. So if anybody has any questions or anything about the vitamin D and website, I hope you'll go check it out. Feedback is always welcome as we adapt and adjust it as we move forward. Thank you, Lynn, for allowing me to discuss this. And again, a lesson from COVID-19. And my mother taught me glasses always half full. And I hope that some positive can come out of these terrible times. And hopefully some of our information sharing will be just that. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Sue. Great presentation, great overview of that that program. Let's dig right into what's the ideal, in your opinion, the ideal for the various stakeholder communities among this industry. So again, we've got our ingredients, we've got our brands, we've got our retailers, we've got our service providers. How do the Vitamin D and Me program envision the interactions and promotion for the various stakeholders within our industry?
Well, I think we can, I think that this is a great example of how we can use education to promote our, our ingredients, our multi-ingredients. I think we can use education and sharing of information to do that in a very positive way, so that it's not just about marketing. I mean, at the end of the day, sure, it's marketing, but I think this is a great example of how we can do that and how we can work together to do that, so that even people who are, quote, competing in industry can come together for information sharing for the greater good. And I think this is one of those examples. And I hope I answered your question, Len. If I didn't, please make me clarify.
No, I think that's it. And obviously we've got different communities and different networks that they can activate. So vitamin D seems now to be a poster child in some respects for this industry collaboration. Deep, strong science, history, unified industry support. Is that a recipe for success that's translatable? And do you see other ingredient categories that are sort of the low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, great question. I think it is. I think it is a great example. And, one of my concerns from the get-go, and I did mention this, is that I don't want anyone to think that vitamin D, like all you have to do is have good vitamin D stat, like take this vitamin D, that's all you have to do for immunity, right? Like we don't want to over highlight it. And so I hope that we can find a way to bring together the importance of overall, all the things that have been mentioned today, zinc, selenium, overall diet, exercise, in a way to bring it all together. But I do think a lot of the things that have been mentioned today, such as zinc, is another one that I think could probably benefit from an organization of information, and selenium, because I think you're right. Selenium is under recognized and under discussed. So I think that those would be two that perhaps we could highlight. And then, branching out into some like elderberry and things that are maybe don't have a DRI, but have lots of research behind them. So I'd like to see the platforms like this emerge for these sort of things, where consumers can feel confident that they're getting science-based information. Because that's one of the biggest things, when people sit down and talk to you about dietary supplements, they say, oh gosh, I just hear so much conflicting information. There's so much noise around this stuff. It works, it doesn't work. And pardon me for that. It works, it doesn't work. Where do I go for solid information? We have created some great sites for that. And I think, we're moving forward in the internet noise, but I'd like to see initiatives like this really help calm that noise, so consumers know they can go somewhere where there's referenced information, where they can say, oh, really? I didn't hear that. Okay, well then here's your link. Go back to the primary information and see it for yourself. So hopefully this is just the beginning.
And that's exactly where I was going to go next. I mean, this responsible stewardship of us as industry, pointing consumers to objective state of science, but we've also got to do a little bit better job, I think, of educating on what the science means and what the science does not mean.
Good point, but it does not.
That's an issue, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I think you can, we went back and forth when we were developing the months that we were developing this before it went live, we went back and forth about the language and the communication. And I was really sort of adamant that I didn't want to communicate it, like oversimplify and communicate and dumb it down to the consumer, because I think we have a consumer base that's different than when, quote, we first started going into the internet years, right? We've got a pretty savvy group out there, and I wanted to make sure we hit to that. And people are, I think one thing, a lesson from COVID-19 is that consumers became very aware that they needed to take health into their own hands and become their own sort of advocate. And I think that's one of the reasons we saw a surge in supplement sales. It was like, I got to do something for myself here, and so we do have an educated base, and I think that initiatives like this should take that to mind, and that references are super important, and make sure they can easily link to a PubMed public sites or public references that you don't have to have a paid access to get to. And that's what we tried to go for.
Got it. One of the things that perturbs me is the low RDI or DRI for vitamin D. And I'm sure that could be a topic of a paper or a couple papers, maybe an even conference in and of itself. What do we got to do? Maybe just a minute on what do we got to do to get that DRI raised?
That is a really good question. I have these I teach at Central Michigan University in their graduate online nutrition program. Most of my students are RDs, and we have this discussion, that exact question, in multiple classes. We talk about it. I teach nutritional epidemiology. We talk about, what do we do about the DRI for protein? There's several of them that we know, like, okay, we have to rethink how we establish this. It's difficult to do. One thing you can do is when they when they come up for renewal, whether it's the DRI, the dietary guidelines, be active in those subcommittees that are created to establish and address those things. Speak out, write letters, united front. It's very, very hard to change dogmas, that's for sure. And then there's really not a stronger dogma than the DRIs and the dietary guidelines. But one good thing is the dietary guidelines do come up for regular renewals. And so those are places, and you and I have had that discussion on other things before, those are places where you can at least try and create a united front. And then the other side is you speak outside of it and say, hey, here's our DRI. This is for like consumer, education and stuff, but it's too low, and here's why. Like, if you can't change it, at least inform public of why it's too low, I guess, go around it if you have to. And yeah, I wish I had a solid answer, because if I knew how to change DRIs easily and quickly, and I had that answer, we'd be changing a lot of them, trust me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Sue. Great